A friend told me he had contemplated finishing a course in somatic therapy that he had started a few years ago. He said he noticed that when he felt down, this idea would spring to mind, and he concluded it was a distracting thought that took him out of the moment to avoid the negative feelings. I suggested that this thought may not be a distraction but an intuition. Perhaps the course would offer a way of overcoming these negative feelings and finding contentment. I reminded him of when he had offered somatic therapy in the past. It had been very well received, with people commenting how good he was at it. I suggested that him being in service to others in this way may be important to his contentment in his life. My friend agreed that being in service to others was important to him, and he recognized that he often found himself thinking about it. However, having thought about it, he had come to the conclusion that completing the course wasn't the right thing for him right now because it didn't fit into his plans. I told my friend I'm reading Ian McGilchrist's book, The Matter with Things. I suggested he be careful of potentially overriding his intuitive thought, a function of the right brain hemisphere, with logical thinking, a left hemisphere endeavor. The problem with left hemisphere thinking, I explained, is that it's based purely on logic, which isn't capable of incorporating magic, good fortune, good luck, serendipity, community spirit in its analysis of validity. It is also predominantly focused on one particular aspect of a situation, say for example the financial aspect, at the exclusion of all others. It doesn't take into account the context of your life. For example, that it would make you happy and what that would mean to you. Like, if you were happy and content, then maybe you would be more prone to attract financial stability by meeting the right people or needing less money. In truth, I said, the right hemisphere might know what's best for us because it is concerned with the whole, which implicitly includes the context of our lives and all our experiences. For example, we learned what an angry face looks like based on our experience of people being angry. The right hemisphere identifies and recognizes facial nuances and patterns associated with anger based on our past experiences. We're not conscious of this process, neither are we conscious when we quickly stereotype someone as angry. And whilst our stereotyping may sometimes be wrong, based on our experience, it is correct. I continued, interestingly, when we try to rationalize our right brain thinking, the left hemisphere will attempt to make up some nonsense in a vain attempt to suggest it understands what is going on. But, in truth, it has no idea how we have arrived at our conclusion. For example, when experienced doctors diagnose their patients, their diagnosis is based on a plethora of indicators and patterns that the right brain has unconsciously identified and recognized in the patients they have previously seen. This might include indicators like skin color, gait, or facial signs, and which may not be registered by the left hemisphere, which is focused on a specific quantifiable aspect of the diagnosis. Of course, a novice doctor doesn't have this experience and may need left brain thinking to make a diagnosis based on logic. An important aspect of left brain thinking is that it is energetic. It requires conscious effort and cognitive power. And because of this, it attempts to override the right brain thinking with its logic, which it may know is incorrect. It's almost like this hemisphere of the brain has an ego. It wants to be right. My friend immediately recognized this in his experience. He described how his logical mind had rationalized what he wanted as selfish. I asked him why it had concluded it was selfish, when in fact, a desire to be in service was completely unselfish. He suggested it was probably used for effect, because this word resonated with him. He said when he thought about doing the course, he would get inspired and excited by the idea. But as soon as he made an attempt to make a logical plan, he would become overwhelmed because it didn't logically make sense to give up all he had to do something that he didn't know the outcome of. He also said his left brain would rationalize that the best thing to do is to stop living in the future and be in the moment, the here and now. In other words, his left hemisphere would override his intuition to complete the course by suggesting it was a distraction. My friend said he recently bought a book called The Soul's Code, and he realized this was motivated by his right brain. He said the book introduced diamonds, which are entities or energy that exist, but not as we consciously know something can exist, but which nevertheless exist, and which drive our destiny. These entities support us in following our unique calling by reminding us of who we are. I recognize these daemons to include Jungian archetypes, which Jung suggested exist in the collective unconscious. My friend mentioned other mythical and folklore entities that included fairies and elves. We agreed that in a culture that focuses and emphasizes conscious, logical, left-brain thinking over right-brain thought, it is essential that we use daily routines that facilitate right-brain thinking to be expressed and heard. Our dreams are a portal into the unconscious, so perhaps we should pay more attention to them. We can also use tarot cards, journaling, and art. By providing opportunities and platforms to commune with our unconscious, we can bring it into our awareness and, as Ian McGilchrist's book evidences, trust these thoughts as credible.